The long-awaited, politically charged release of the Epstein files has finally happened, and the fallout is creating shockwaves that are redefining political battles, media frenzies, and public trust. On January 30, 2026, the Department of Justice, under Attorney General Pam Bondi, published a staggering 3.5 million pages of records related to the investigations into Jeffrey Epstein and his network. This dump, mandated by the bipartisan Epstein Files Transparency Act signed by President Trump himself, was promised to bring transparency. Instead, it has ignited a firestorm of conspiracy theories, political recriminations, and a painful new chapter for victims. First, let's understand how we got here. After Epstein's 2019 death in a New York jail cell officially ruled a suicide, countless files related to his sex trafficking probe were sealed, fueling decades of speculation and conspiracy. During the 2024 campaign, then-candidate Donald Trump pledged on platforms like Fox News and Alex Fridman podcast to release all documents, vowing to name names. Following his re-election, a rare bipartisan coalition in Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act. In November of 2025, the law gave the Justice Department 30 days to review and release all unclassified records from the FBI, U.S. attorneys' offices, and other agencies concerning Epstein, his associates, and his network. Critical exceptions were made to protect victims' personally identifying information. Child sexual abuse material and graphic content were to be redacted. However, a key provision granted the House and Senate Judiciary Committees access to an unredacted list of all politically exposed persons named within. The DOJ missed its initial December deadline, releasing less than 1% of the material by January 5, prompting outrage from the law sponsors, Democrat Khanna of California and Republican Thomas Massie of Kentucky. They accused the department of criminal violations of the statute, demanded a court-appointed monitor, and began discussing potential contempt proceedings or even impeachment articles against Attorney General Bondi. President Trump, on his Truth Social platform on December 26, framed the delay as a radical left witch hunt, demanding, "Release the Democrat names first." Then came the January 30 megadump. The Justice Department's public portal dropped 3.5 million responsive pages. This included searchable PDFs, email chains, FBI interview summaries known as 302s, flight logs, and victim statements, covering investigations from Palm Beach to New York from 1996 up to Epstein's death. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, a former personal lawyer for Donald Trump, announced this was the final tranche and stated the review found no basis for any further federal prosecutions, adding that the materials effectively exonerated implicated parties. Let's break down the key contents. The files contain over 2,100 mentions of Donald Trump, primarily in phone logs, email chains, and flight manifests. There are 1.2 million emails from Epstein's accounts, 450,000 visitor records for locations like Mar-a-Lago and Epstein's private island, Little St. James, and approximately 17,000 victim-related documents with names redacted. The DOJ noted this was trimmed down from over 5 million original pages after removing duplicates. So, what do the files actually say about Donald Trump? They detail a social relationship from roughly 1987 to 2004, with Epstein appearing as a guest at parties at Mar-a-Lago, and Trump famously quoted in 2000 to calling him a terrific guy. The files confirm Trump banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago in late 2004 after, according to witness accounts, Epstein allegedly made advances toward an underage girl at the club. Flight logs show Trump was on Epstein's plane, the so-called Lolita Express, 7 times between 1993 and 1997. Exclusively on routes between Florida and New York, there is no record of him ever traveling to Epstein's Island. Logs also show flights for his then-wife Melania and daughter Ivanka. Regarding law enforcement, the files show Trump cooperated with the Palm Beach police investigation in 2005, providing phone lists and offering a tip about Epstein having girls. The documents related to Epstein's infamous 2008 non-prosecution agreement, overseen by then U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta, who later became Trump's Secretary of Labor, show no evidence of interference by Trump. Critically, there are no victim allegations or credible law enforcement tips in the files accusing Trump of participating in any abuse. A civil suit by victim Virginia Giuffre against Trump was dropped early on. Were there any smoking guns? 2 items have been amplified. First, a 2011 email from Epstein to author Michael Wolff, suggesting Wolff should leak dirt on Trump to harm a potential 2012 presidential run. Second, an unsubstantiated, second-hand FBI tip alleging Trump knew about the abuses, which was investigated and dropped for lack of evidence. The files also show Epstein called Trump's offices approximately 50 times over the years, contextually for business or social reasons. President Trump's response was swift and definitive, calling the scrutiny a total hoax, and stating, Wolf and Epstein were grifters exposed. I will sue everyone. But the release has had a devastating side effect. Despite redaction efforts, on February 2nd, thousands of unredacted victim photos and names were discovered within the searchable files and began circulating online. The DOJ yanked and reprocessed the data on February 3rd, but the damage was done. Victim advocates from organizations like Human Rights Watch and MeHive decried a brutal revictimization and are now demanding full unsealing. With over 298 lawsuits already filed against the Justice Department for privacy violations. Politically, the firestorm is bipartisan but for different reasons. Sponsors Khanna and Massie argue the release is insufficient, with an estimated 3 million pages still heavily redacted, and are threatening contempt charges against Bondi at a scheduled February 10th hearing. Democrats on the Oversight Committee are launching probes into what they call a cover-up to protect Trump allies subtly mentioned like business associates or party guests. Republicans, led by figures like Marjorie Taylor Greene, are focusing the narrative on other names in the files, such as the 1,800 mentions of Bill Clinton and his 26 documented flights on Epstein's plane. Greene has loudly demanded the release of the full pedo list, implying it implicates political opponents. The release data includes numerous high-profile names, with no current allegations of criminal wrongdoing, including tech and business figures like Bill Gates and Richard Branson, and celebrities like Prince Andrew, who is mentioned in the context of island visits. The mention of figures like Elon Musk in phone logs has added fuel to the online conspiracy inferno. And that is perhaps the most significant outcome, the torrent of conspiracy. Online communities like Khanna and factions on platforms like X have surged with two opposing narratives, one claiming the release proves Trump is draining the swamp of a deep state child trafficking ring, and the other asserting the files were heavily edited by that same deep state to protect the powerful. A recent Pew poll suggests 51% of Americans believe the files clear Trump, but a vast majority believe there is more to the story. As the 2026 midterms loom, the immigration crisis may overshadow the scandal, but the files have indelibly etched a new layer of mistrust and spectacle into the American political landscape, revealing less about Epstein's crimes which were already known, and more about our fractured state of truth, privacy, and justice.